The mahogany conference table gleamed under the crystal chandelier as I took my usual seat at the far end, away from the real family business. The Whitmore Trust building still intimidated most people who entered its marble lobby, but I'd been coming to these monthly meetings since I was 18. Now at 31 I knew exactly why I'd been summoned today. My father, Charles Whitmore III, sat at the head of the table in his hand-tailored suit, radiating the authority that came with managing one of the region's oldest family trusts. To his right sat my brother Marcus, golden child and heir apparent, wearing his Harvard MBA like a crown. My sister Victoria perched beside him, her designer everything screaming "Look at me, wealth." And then there was me. Isabella Whitmore, the family disappointment in my off-the-rack blazer and sensible shoes. "Thank you all for coming," Dad began, his voice carrying the weight of generations of Whitmore authority. "We have some important family business to discuss." I already knew what was coming. The whispered phone calls between Marcus and Victoria over the past month hadn't been as discreet as they thought. The concerned emails about my lifestyle choices and concerning independence had made their way back to me through well-meaning cousins. "As you know," Dad continued, pulling out a leather portfolio, "the Whitmore Trust has supported this family for 4 generations. It's a privilege that comes with responsibilities." Victoria nodded eagerly, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light. She'd never worked a day in her life but had strong opinions about responsibility. However, Dad's voice hardened, some family members seem to have forgotten that privilege requires proper behavior, proper associations and proper respect for family values. Here it came. Marcus leaned forward, unable to hide his satisfaction. "Dad, maybe you should just get to the point." "Very well." Dad opened the portfolio and pulled out official-looking documents. "Isabella, your continued defiance of family expectations, your refusal to take a proper position in our business, and your insistence on living like..." He paused, searching for the right word. "Like a common person has forced us to make a difficult decision." I said nothing, keeping my face neutral. I'd learned long ago that emotional reactions only gave them ammunition. "Effective immediately," Dad announced, "you are being removed from the family trust. No more monthly allowances, no more financial safety net, no more support from this family." The silence that followed was supposed to be dramatic. Victoria practically vibrated with excitement, while Marcus tried to look appropriately solemn. "Furthermore," Dad continued, "your trust fund, which was set to transfer fully to your control at 35, will instead be redistributed between Marcus and Victoria. They understand the importance of maintaining the Whitmore legacy." I looked around the table at their expectant faces. They were waiting for me to break down, to beg, to finally submit to their idea of who I should be. Instead, I reached for my phone. "Isabella," Victoria said sharply, "this is serious. Put that away and address what Dad just said." I ignored her, opening my banking app. "Actually, this is interesting timing." "Timing?" Marcus scoffed. "What's interesting about finally facing reality?" I turned my phone screen toward them, displaying my primary checking account balance. The number was clear, undeniable, and substantial enough to make Victoria gasp. "Isabella," Dad said slowly, "what exactly am I looking at?" "My checking account," I said calmly. "One of them, anyway." Marcus squinted at the screen. That's impossible. You work at some nonprofit. You drive a 10-year-old Honda." I swiped to my savings account. The number was even larger. "Where?" Victoria's voice cracked. "Where did this money come from?" Instead of answering, I pulled out my laptop and opened a presentation I'd been preparing for months, just in case this day came. "Let me show you something," I said, connecting to the conference room's display system. "This is Meridian Financial Services. Small investment firm, started 8 years ago with initial capital of $50,000. The company logo filled the screen, along with financial charts showing steady, impressive growth. Dad leaned forward. "I've never heard of Meridian Financial." "Not surprising. We specialize in quiet wealth management for clients who prefer privacy over publicity." I clicked to the next slide, showing our client roster. Fortune 500 companies, government entities, high-net-worth individuals who don't want their financial strategies broadcasted. Marcus was reading over his glasses. "Isabella, why are you showing us this?" "Because..." I clicked to the ownership structure. "I founded it. I own it. And for the past 5 years, Meridian Financial has been quietly managing investments that have generated enough income to fund something rather interesting. Victoria's face had gone pale. Fund what? I smiled, clicking to the final slide. A complex financial flowchart appeared, showing money transfers, account numbers, and payment schedules. At the top, in bold letters, Whitmore Family Expense Analysis, past 5 years. This, I said quietly, is where your lifestyle actually comes from. The room fell silent as they studied the chart. Lines connected my company's accounts to shell corporations, which connected to anonymous transfers, which connected to the accounts that funded their lives. The monthly payment for Victoria's Manhattan apartment, I said using a laser pointer. Meridian client account 7749. Victoria's mouth fell open. Marcus's car payments, his children's private school tuition, his wife's shopping allowances. Meridian client account 8851. Marcus gripped the edge of the table. Dad's country club memberships, mother's charity donations, the maintenance on this building, even the salary for your personal staff. I let the information sink in before continuing. You see, the Whitmore Trust hasn't been generating significant income for over a decade. Poor management, outdated investment strategies, and excessive withdrawals have reduced it to barely break-even status. Dad's face had gone from authoritative red to ashen gray. That's impossible. The annual reports show exactly what I told our accounting firm to show. Enough stability to maintain your dignity, nothing more. I clicked to another slide showing the trust's actual financial position. Without the anonymous supplemental funding from Meridian Financial, this family would have been bankrupt 3 years ago. Victoria stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. You're lying. This is some kind of elaborate joke. Is it? I pulled up another document. Here's the contract your apartment management company has with Aurora Holdings, one of my subsidiaries. They've been prepaying your rent annually for the past 4 years. But, she sat back down heavily, but I thought Dad was paying for that. Dad thought the trust was paying for it. The trust thought it was coming from shrewd investments. Everyone thought someone else was handling it. Marcus found his voice. But, why would you do this without telling us? I looked at him steadily. Because every time I tried to discuss the family's financial situation, you dismissed me as irresponsible. Every time I suggested modernizing our investment approach, you said I didn't understand old money. Every time I offered to help, you told me to focus on my little nonprofit job. The truth was, my little nonprofit job had been perfect cover. Working at a financial literacy organization had given me access to networks, strategies, and opportunities that traditional wealth management never would have provided. While my family attended charity galas, I was building relationships with the people who actually moved money in this city. So when the trust started failing, I continued, I had a choice. Let you all fall into poverty and learn humility the hard way, or quietly step in and maintain your illusions of financial security. Dad was staring at the financial charts like they were written in a foreign language. Isabella, I don't understand how you could have built something this significant without our knowledge. Because you never asked about my work. You assumed that because I chose to live modestly and work in nonprofit, I must be struggling financially. I clicked to another slide showing Meridian's complete portfolio. While you were all focused on maintaining appearances, I was building something sustainable. Something that could actually support a family legacy instead of just spending it down. Victoria's voice was small. How much are we talking about? Meridian manages just over $800 million in assets. My personal net worth is somewhere around $120 million, though it fluctuates with market conditions. The silence that followed was profound. Outside, I could hear the distant sounds of the city, people going about their normal Tuesday afternoon business, completely unaware that a family's entire understanding of itself was being dismantled in this conference room. Marcus finally spoke. So when you said you'd been funding our lifestyle, I meant literally. Your mortgage payments, your car leases, your children's education, your wife's spending, even your vacation to Tuscany last month. All of it traced back to investments I made in companies I built. Dad removed his glasses, cleaning them with shaking hands. How long have you known about the trust's problems? 6 years. I tried to bring it to your attention 5 years ago, remember? You told me I was being dramatic and didn't understand family finance. I did remember that conversation. Dad had patted my head like I was still 12 years old and told me to leave money matters to the adults. That's when I realized I had two choices, I continued. Let you face the consequences of decades of financial mismanagement, or find a way to preserve the family while building something better. Victoria was scrolling through her phone frantically. But the credit cards, the bank accounts, all showing healthy balances because of automatic transfers from accounts I control. Your credit has been maintained, your lifestyle preserved, your reputation's intact. Why? Marcus asked again. After the way we've treated you, why protect us? I thought about that question. Why had I spent years secretly supporting people who consistently dismissed and undervalued me? Because you're my family, I said simply. I didn't agree with your attitudes or your assumptions, but I wasn't going to let you lose everything because of pride and poor financial planning. Dad looked up from the charts. What happens now? That depends on you, I said, closing my laptop. You just cut me off from a trust fund that was essentially worthless anyway. You can continue thinking I'm the family disappointment who needs to learn responsibility, or you can acknowledge reality. I stood up, straightening my practical blazer. The reality is that I've been supporting this family for years while building a business that could support us for generations. The question is whether you want to be part of that future or keep living in the fantasy of past glory. Victoria was crying now, quietly but visibly. Isabella, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. You had no idea because you never asked. You assumed that because I didn't flaunt wealth, I didn't have it. You confused simplicity with failure. Marcus stood up as well. What can we do? How do we fix this? You can start by understanding that success doesn't always look like what you expect. That intelligence and capability aren't measured by how closely someone follows your predetermined path. I gathered my things, noting how different this felt from every other family meeting I'd attended. For the first time they were really seeing me. The financial support will continue, I said, heading toward the door. Because that's what family does. But the next time you want to cut someone off, you might want to check who's actually paying the bills. Dad's voice stopped me at the door. Isabella, wait. I turned back. Can you teach us? About what you've built, how you did it. For the first time all day I smiled genuinely. I'd like that, Dad. I've been waiting years for you to ask. A month later I sat in the same conference room, but everything had changed. The family trust was being restructured under my oversight. Marcus had taken a genuine interest in learning modern investment strategies. Victoria was working with our financial literacy nonprofit, discovering she had a talent for helping people understand money management. And Dad had become my most eager student, asking detailed questions about portfolio diversification and market analysis with the same intensity he'd once reserved for lecturing me about responsibility. The Q3 reports look excellent, he said, reviewing documents I'd prepared. This sustainable investment approach is generating better returns than anything we've seen in decades. Because it's based on actual market research rather than tradition, I replied. Money doesn't care about family names or old strategies. It responds to smart decisions and careful planning. Victoria looked up from her laptop. Isabella, I still can't believe we didn't know about any of this. How did you manage to keep Meridian completely separate from the family name? Shell corporations, different legal addresses, and careful compartmentalization. I learned early that mixing family expectations with business decisions rarely ends well. Marcus nodded. I'm starting to understand that. Working with you these past few weeks has taught me more about finance than my entire MBA program. Because MBA programs teach theory, I said. Building actual wealth requires understanding how money really moves in the real world. Dad set down his papers and looked at me directly. Isabella, I owe you an apology. Not just for last month, but for years of not seeing who you really are. We all owe her an apology, Victoria added. I can't believe I was so focused on appearances that I never bothered to understand substance. I thought about the years of family dinners where I'd sat quietly while they planned my life for me. The assumptions, the dismissals, the constant pressure to conform to their vision of success. The important thing, I said, is that we're here now. Building something better together. My phone buzzed with a message from my assistant. 3 more clients wanted to transfer their portfolios to Meridian, attracted by our track record and discretion. Speaking of building something better, I said, we have some decisions to make about expansion. Meridian is growing faster than I anticipated. Dad leaned forward eagerly. What kind of decisions? Whether to stay boutique and exclusive, or scale up to compete with the major wealth management firms. What do you think? Marcus asked. I looked around the table at my family. The same people who'd tried to cut me off just weeks ago, now hanging on my every word about financial strategy. I think, I said, we have the foundation to build something remarkable. Something that could establish the Whitmore name in finance for the next century, not just preserve it from the last one. Victoria smiled. I like the sound of that. Then let's get to work, I said, opening my laptop. I'll show you what real wealth building looks like. As I began explaining my expansion plans, I reflected on how dramatically everything had changed. The family that had once seen me as a disappointment now recognized me as their salvation. The trust fund I'd supposedly lost access to had been replaced by something far more valuable. A business I'd built myself and a family that finally understood my worth. Sometimes the best response to being cut off isn't begging to be let back in. It's proving that you were never dependent on their approval in the first place. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is success so complete that it transforms your critics into your most devoted students. The next morning I arrived at Meridian's offices to find an email from Dad. Isabella, after reviewing everything you've built, I have one question. Would you consider letting me work for you? I'd like to learn what real financial management looks like. Your proud father, Charles. I smiled, typing back, Dad, you've been working for me for 5 years. You just didn't know it. Welcome to the team. Your daughter, the CEO. Outside my office window, the city stretched out like a map of possibilities. Somewhere out there were other families struggling with outdated financial strategies, other trust funds bleeding money, other young adults being underestimated by people who confused tradition with wisdom. I had work to do, wealth to build, and a family legacy to transform from something that lived in the past to something that would thrive in the future. The girl they'd tried to cut off from the family trust had become the woman who saved it. And we were just getting started.